Today we're looking at baby carriers in William Hogarth's The March of the Guards to Finchley from 1750. The March of the Guards to Finchley depicts a fictional troupe of buffoonish British troops in Tottenham Court Road in London on their way to fight the Jacobean forces in the Second Uprising of 1745. It's an example of Hogarth's genius for moralistic satire on Georgian society. Hogarth held up a mirror to the British army, who prided themselves on their discipline, showing them their vices, and many people, including King George II, were offended by the portrayal. Hogarth's assistant Luke Sullivan created the engraving of the painting. Subscribers could purchase a copy for 7 shillings and 6 pence, and for an additional 3 shillings, subscribers could enter a lottery for the original painting. As the lottery deadline approached, there were still 167 unsold entries, which were purchased by the Foundling Hospital, which won the original painting, where it still lives to this day. William Hogarth and his wife Jane were unable to have their own children, and so turned their hearts towards supporting the Foundling Hospital, of which William was a founding governor. He set up an art gallery at the hospital, making the Foundling Hospital one of the most popular charities of the time. The infants in the foreground get an adult's eye view of the events that are happening around them, safe from the backs of their caregivers. Note, the pram or stroller as we would recognize it has yet to be invented, not that one would be able to get around in a crowd like this one. The chaotic scene presented in the painting has been compared to the depiction of the British Army in Tom Jones, a novel by Henry Fielding, a friend and contemporary of William Hogarth, and his work is referenced elsewhere in the painting, as we'll get to in a moment. The baby to the left of the center stares at a soldier who is caught between 2 women. The one to the left is a ballad singer, with a basket full of printed ballads to sell, including God Save the King. She's touching her heavily pregnant belly, looking pleadingly at the soldier. The other woman, her back to us, is seemingly dressed in the dark robes of a priest, as she winds up to hit the soldier with the rolled-up Jacobite newspaper. Based on this analysis, the soldier represents England in the conflict, and the ballad singer the Protestant Hanoverian loyalist, and the other woman the Catholic Jacobites. If George II had taken a moment to consider this, he'd have recognized that Hogarth was in fact a loyalist. With this interpretation, the infant, the future generations of the nation, is watching England in a struggle between the 2 political factions that will influence its future life and maybe already has. Other historians have noted that the woman's pamphlets are a nod to Henry Fielding's ironic anti-Stuart weekly newspaper, the Jacobite Journal, which was published between 1747 and 1748. In the corner of the painting, a woman pours a drink to an already falling down drunk soldier. She wears an oversized redingote with an apron that has lots of large pockets so that she can carry everything with her hands free. From high on her back, a baby reaches out over her shoulder at the shiny cup, or possibly what's going into it. Maybe this is Hogarth's way of warning that a baby in this environment is destined to become a boozer or a thief. Or maybe the baby's just reaching down for the man who has fallen. It's not clear how the baby is attached to the woman's back, but clearly the infant's being supported in a high back carry. The woman, who seems to be quite clever in her choice of clothing, no carry-on baggage charges for her, may have another pocket or hood in her redingote that the baby is set into. This is Futuradia. Just as I was finished editing this video, I pulled up the etching to see about using part of it for the thumbnail, when I realized that the gin seller had a strap across her chest that isn't in the finished painting. I've seen this kind of thick leather strap in other contemporary art being used to hold a wicker basket on the back, the kind that might be used for gathering firewood or foraging, or carrying a baby or multiple children. Here are 2 examples. One, a rabbit carrying a bunch of poodles, and another example from the Romance of Alexander. Both are from the 14th century. Towards the center of the painting, that other baby, we can see a full view of the infant carrier, which is made from some kind of natural colored cloth, which looks to be tied in a simple rucksack. The baby is entirely supported in the fabric up to its neck, but it is not held snug against the wearer's back. There is some drape created by the top rail, the hem nearest the baby's neck, being tighter than the body of the carrier fabric. The fabric may be a large fichu, a common accessory for women at the time, which was a triangle or folded square shawl or kerchief. To use it as a carrier, the point of the triangle would either be folded up under the infant or secured with passets of the fabric under the baby's bottom. Infant carriers such as these would have been ubiquitous in Europe among the working poor, itinerants, and beggars. The use of infant carriers in Europe had been associated with poverty and itinerancy since at least the medieval era. The ideal was that if an infant has a home, then it should be at that home. Yet the women in this painting needed to keep the baby with them and still get work done. Perhaps they couldn't afford a place or a person to care for the baby while they went out to work, or they aren't even from the area. However, despite the association with poverty infant carriers had, both of the babies in this painting look healthy, or Hogarth just preferred to paint healthy-looking babies. Hogarth's painting, though satirical in tone, gives us a glimpse of an often overlooked history, that of mundane infant care of the working poor. Hogarth was an artist who acknowledged and cared about the most vulnerable in his teeming city. Infant carriers were not associated with parenting ideology, but were rather pragmatic tools, necessary for caregivers who needed to keep the babies close and safe while they still had their arms free for other work, like serving their customers or for navigating the crowded streets of London, then as now.